Hey Dina, what if I told you that you could help your brain, you could help your body live longer, you can increase your total quality of life, and you could reduce some risk factors for diseases? Would you want to listen to this conversation?
I think so, Bob. I mean, are you selling some supplements or what is this that you're proposing?
This is the beautiful thing. Listeners, we are talking about sleep. So we're not talking about supplements, although we will phase in a few that are highlighting sleep. But listen, so many people, I don't know the stats, D, but so many people have issues with sleep, including myself. I won't speak for you, D, but it seems like, every other night, maybe, I mean, it depends on my training, depends on the weather, depends on all this stuff. But here's the thing that I've noticed personally, as I've gotten older, my sleep patterns are much more, let's just say, disturbing.
hmm
How about you?
I would agree. I mean, I am a woman early postmenopause, so I would say, if you don't mind me sharing that detail, definitely the experience of like good quality sleep has dramatically changed in the last 5 years. Aging, maybe stress and like worry of life, and for me personally, just having two surgeries in the last 1 year, like keep going. The list is long, how much all of the things that in our lives can impact sleep individually and just maybe as a an aging population.
That's amazing, right? I mean, we're both in our
Yeah.
50s. And let me just qualify this because you qualified, you set some qualifiers for you. So obviously I'm a male. I am
Yeah.
a male and I have normal testosterone levels. So the guys out there listening. And here's the thing too, I agree with you. Like my sleep really fluctuates depending on my stress level too, right? So it could be anything from like you name it, from life stress to family stress to work stress to training stress even, right? I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of athletes have like overdone or overreached or even overtrained, and that's going to affect sleep. So today we're going to cut to the chase, listeners. We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about improving sleep. And there are actually some strategies, both nutrition and non-nutrition, but obviously we're going to emphasize more of the nutritional that we're going to discuss. So think of it as a top 10, top 20. I didn't even counted how many
Yeah.
things we're talking about, but listeners, you're going to want to jot this down. So please don't jot anything down if you're listening on a trail or in the car or anything like that. Please be safe. But I feel like D, the first place to go, like when I'm talking about athletes and setting this whole situation up, is talking about their sleep hygiene schedule. So I feel like out are the days where we could just say, oh, well, Dina, you go to bed at 10? Great. Have a good night's sleep. Right?
Oh, I know, Bob. I was just reflecting when you mentioned like, yeah, we're in our 50s and like how much sleep changes when we age and all this stuff. And I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna do it. Back in the day,
Oh, check.
Bob. But I
Nice.
mean, sleep hygiene was like brush your teeth. Then
Yeah.
maybe you floss.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
then you
I
just go to
can
bed.
can we just say on record, I floss twice a day.
Excellent. I love it.
Okay. Thank you.
But
But
I
I
mean,
noticed you
when
did not say how many times you floss per day.
evenings
You
once
don't
a
have to.
day. But I
Sorry,
mean,
listeners.
when we were in our teens and 20s,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least for
yeah.
me, that was like, oh yeah, I brush my teeth. I have sleep hygiene. I brush
Yeah,
my teeth.
totally, totally. Yeah. And maybe you read a book for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever. Yeah.
Maybe.
Like a hard copy book
Anyways.
if you, yeah. But no, it's true, right? So I think these days, like my messages are, okay, we need to follow a sleep or we need to implement a sleep hygiene schedule. So let's talk about what that means, listeners. If you haven't heard this before, because I kind of giggled the first time I heard sleep hygiene. I'm like, what? What do we do? Don't you
Yeah.
just, it's like 20 years ago. Don't you just go to bed? Well, no, there's actually a process. And listen, listeners, especially if you are more of the 35 and older category, our bodies like routine much more as we get older, and it appreciates that both from a biological circadian rhythm and from a cognitive standpoint. So please take heed in what we're saying with these specific topics. So I'll start. The first thing, D, is literally carve out a time, and I usually say 2 to 3 hours before your predicted bedtime, meaning head to pillow lights are out, right? So
Yeah.
that's my first thing. It's not, hey, I'm going to bed at 10. I'm going to start my sleep hygiene schedule at 9:30. That's
Yes.
actually not enough time these days because as you'll listen to, or as you'll hear us say, listeners, there's more to this schedule. So 2 to 3 hours beforehand is kind of step one. What are we talking about next, D?
Well, along those lines, I think about over like day to day in terms of that. time before bed that we're starting to prepare our minds and bodies for sleep is also in the morning time, right? Is like consistency in that wake time. And then day to day is like, yeah, just trying to aim for overall consistency in both of those ends of the day is like, start of the day is waking up around the same time. And then, because that definitely can impact sleep, and that readiness and all that stuff that's going to happen later in the day. So it's like setting yourself up by what's going on in the morning. When do you wake and how? And then also in the evening, as you were saying, for that kind of preparation time frame is also like aiming for consistent time frame day to day. That makes sense.
100% support that. And let me give
Okay.
two tips or top or examples of this too. I will say, I have learned personally and have one that if I get outside of about a 20 to 30 minute window of my sleep to bed or waking,
Hmm.
I function very differently for the first half of the day. So again, it's back to that routine, the circadian rhythm. I'm going to throw another kind of uh, piece of wood on the fire here because, as we all know, I also work with younger athletes, collegiate athletes, who we know their sleep schedule is, well, let's just say their sleep schedule is non-existent. They don't have a sleep schedule. Most of them do not have a sleep hygiene schedule. The reason I'm saying this is because listeners, if you are younger, then great. And if you're not, if you have kids, then listen up, right? Because the best thing you can do is to make sure that your younger person, younger athlete is trying to follow consistency in these sleep times and schedules and going to bed and waking up. I can't tell you how many times, Dee, that I've talked to collegiate athletes and they can literally cannot function the next day when they go to bed at 10 o'clock versus midnight versus 10 o'clock, whatever it is, or waking up at 5 to lift versus 10. I mean, it's amazing. And sometimes I feel like when you're young, you're bulletproof and you can get through it. What I'm seeing now, Dina, is that times have changed, and I do believe it's based on our next topic we're going to talk about here. But I believe that these inconsistencies with sleep, going to bed and waking up, are really affecting cognitive functioning in our younger athletes, in addition to older. But I just want to bring that out because I'm actually seeing that every single day that I'm working with college athletes, and it's quite scary, which leads us into our next thing that we want to talk about, and
Mhm.
that is something that you and I really didn't have to deal with growing up, right?
Oh, I know. When we think about the electronica in our world and
Mm,
digital devices, Bob, yeah,
yes.
that wasn't really a thing. I mean, we had the television
Yes, yes.
and maybe there's a radio, with the
Yeah,
dials and all that stuff. No buttons and screens and blue lights that I
yeah,
can recall. Well, like
yeah,
iPhones or
yeah.
all that stuff and computer to the degree that we have now. And so I think with our culture and our society is like the role of all of these digital and electronic devices in the impact or its impact
Hmm.
upon this sleep hygiene and setting ourselves up. So, really getting a handle of what are we doing in those hours before we sleep. And I don't want to use the addiction word, but yeah, like
Mm.
reliance on some of these things to quote unquote calm down or wind down is are these things actually causing an issue, Bob?
Well, I think I actually will use the word addiction, and I will answer your question, yes, because again,
Okay.
I am seeing this on the front line, and it's sad, it's very alarming and sad. But yeah, I mean, it's device management. So I look at it as like managing your devices, right?
Yeah.
And personally, this is the rule I give: within 1 to 2 hours, it's no devices at all. Now, of course, are there little but okay, so if you have blue light blocking glasses, if I get that. Like I totally get it. But here's the thing, like your brain needs rest. It
Yeah.
needs our body needs to go into incorporating the parasympathetic nervous system more. Like, and I get it. Like I'm victim of this too. Do I always turn off my devices 1 to 2 hours before bed? No. But I try to most of the time because you know those things, and I've been trying to do that's actually what I'm trying to do better in 2025 is like really manage that better and read books like paper books a little
Yeah.
bit more just to like under like a nice dim light kind of a thing. But
Yes.
again, it's a problem. It's not going away. All I'm going to say is, listeners, just manage your devices a little bit more. Like get into a
Yeah.
routine. If you can within 1 to 2 hours shut them off, great. If not, there are things you can do, like the glasses. Like you can do so many different things to lessen the impact. But we won't harp on that too much because I think
Yeah.
most of us know this. Let's get
Yeah.
into another one that's more nutrition related that I personally have it's it's crazy, D. I don't even know what age it was, but all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, why am I peeing so, why do I have to wake up and pee so much? Like what's going
Hmm.
on? So managing not devices, but fluids later in the day and at night. Have you also personally had to kind of navigate that a little bit better?
I have, Bob. Yeah. I mean, I'm a tea drinker in the evening after dinner. That's part of my wind down is tea. And of course, there's probably more water in there. And so, yeah, I have found, oh no, I can't do the big 2 cups of tea at 8 p.m. because that is an issue with the waking and then having to, yeah, hit the bathroom. So I
Yeah.
think that is a valid issue in terms of how do we control or just kind of regulate our fluid intake because we don't want to not have fluids, but
Yeah.
finding your own threshold, I guess, and flow of fluids, if that makes any sense. But how much can you tolerate without having to wake up unnecessarily or multiple times throughout the night?
I've actually done that experiment quite a bit, and I am also a tea drinker at night, and I've had to actually discontinue that, and it bums
Oh,
me. It totally
entirely.
bums me out entirely. Yeah,
I
it doesn't even
see.
matter what tea. It doesn't even matter.
That's
I will say this
interesting.
though, too, listeners. You're like, okay, but these are two 50-plus-year-olds talking.
Oh,
I see this in college
geez.
athletes. I see it in 20-year-old athletes. So it's not like it happened. I feel like it happens more biologically as we age, yes, but the issue still presents itself in younger athletes. So don't think it's just an age thing. So
Yeah.
here's my takeaway with this, D, and I do it personally, and I recommend most athletes do it. Of course, it does depend on your work schedule, your training schedule. I totally get that. But just listen to this. I try to have, in addition to myself doing this, I try to front load fluids from the first 2/3 of the day. So if you go like time you wake up until about, I don't know, it depends on what time you wake up, but maybe around 3 o'clock-ish, that's where the majority, where I would say 80% of your fluids are consumed. And then to gradually, not to dehydrate yourself, but to gradually decrease your fluid intake from about mid-afternoon until time of bed. So
Yeah.
that's the best strategy in addition to the other things like caffeine, which I know we're going to talk about. But I think from a fluid standpoint, that is what I have found makes most sense. And it actually works best in most individuals.
Yeah, I was just curious, Bob, like what is in the tea that makes some people feel like even if you have a small cup of tea, six,
Yeah.
8 ounces, like a true cup,
Hmm.
what is there something that makes us pee more? Like, is there a diuretic effect that I we didn't appreciate, or is that just
Yeah.
kind of getting confused with the whole volume of fluid we're
I
drinking in
think it
that
could
later
be
day?
it could be volume. I mean, it obviously depends on if it's caffeinated or not, obviously, but
Yeah,
taking the caffeine out of it, if it's
yeah.
like totally decaf, that's I think it's a volume thing. Because
Okay.
again, like I can
Yeah.
if I'm within 4 hours of bedtime, I can do tea, but like I've got this window, 2 to 3 hours, I literally cannot consume, I should not consume any fluid before bed
Okay.
because then I know it doesn't give me enough time to
To
actually empty my bladder
excrete.
before bed. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. But here's what we're talking about, developing your schedule. Like I
Yeah.
now know this with my body because I've done so many type of experiments where I'm like, oh, and sometimes, you'll have, I don't know about you, D, but sometimes I'll have some late nights or some kid stuff or whatever. I'm like, oh, I know I'm doing this and I know I'm gonna wake up, but
Yeah.
I'm thirsty. I'm gonna drink,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah. Well,
so we're
along
not telling you to purposely dehydrate yourself.
no,
Yeah.
along those lines is the whole alcohol component because that is a fluid,
Oh,
Bob, to
yeah, yeah.
manage.
Hmm.
And as you were just saying, like, okay, I know I'm gonna do this, make this decision, and know I'm gonna suffer. I feel like alcohol, the decision to drink alcohol, especially for us, let's call it 40 and older,
Hmm.
maybe younger and older. Well, and then like how much alcohol for our younger folk too. That is a definite sleep disruptor. And
Oh
so
yeah.
the decision to have alcohol, the decision to how much, the timing, and all of that, I think falls under this umbrella of fluid management.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have too much to say about that. I do not consume alcohol. So yeah, but
Yeah.
again, when working with athletes, I'm like, well, because that's usually the first question I ask, right? How do you sleep? Like, tell me about your sleep. And then we back up and I'm like, okay, so what are you consuming, food and fluid, before you sleep? And then the whole, oh, I had a glass of wine. I'm like, okay, well, let's like experiment. Is this the thing that is causing you to wake up and pee, or is it something
Yeah,
else? Like, but I hear you. I mean, alcohol is just one of those things where it's like, it's going to rear its ugly head in terms of its negative consequences, right? So
for sure.
is it worth again my thing with athletes is, well, can you do it earlier? Like, I know sometimes that's not as
Yeah,
realistic, but we want to listen, we want to protect the sleep window. I mean, there are so
yeah,
many things why we should care about sleep, which we kind of introed in with, well, longevity and cognitive functioning and even just brain aging, right? I mean, we're not even talking about that. That's where we secrete the most human growth hormone. That's where our body recovers. Like, if you mess with your sleep schedule and you do not sleep well, defined as quality and or quantity, that is going to really, really negate the benefits that you're trying to do in terms of fitness and nutrition. So I try to protect sleep as much as possible.
yeah. Good
Yeah.
point to bring it back, not just to the short-term effect of like, yeah, you're gonna have a crappy night's sleep, but that long-term impact of all of those crappy nights sleep upon
Yeah.
our health outcomes. And then as athletes, yeah, like you didn't recover as well and you didn't adapt as well over time to the exercise or training that you were putting in. So those, I think, important to bring that to the
Totally.
forefront here. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, let's shift into food now. So we talked about
Okay.
hydration and different fluids. Now let's shift into more of the foods that may affect sleep or may help sleep, right? So
Hmm.
what do we know? Should we talk about calories first and then we'll kind of break it down into the other
Oh, yeah.
nutrients?
That's a good
Yeah.
idea. Hmm.
Okay. So calorie wise, and this is what's interesting to me, D, because I do believe that there is an age component here. So do you want to start or you want me to start with this?
Well, are you talking about volume? So
Volume
energy,
of food.
yeah, energy
Yep.
density, calorie density of the
Yes.
foods,
Yes.
maybe independent of quality of food, or how do you
Let's go,
reckon
let's
that?
go independent. Let's just do volume of total energy, total food,
Yeah.
like independent of quality. So it can be crap food
Yeah.
or non-crap food. Yeah.
I don't know why that's cracking me up. I mean, I would just generalize and say, yeah, the bigger that meal in terms of how many calories, the correlation then or causation to
Mhm,
sleep ability to fall asleep, and then that sleep quality being negatively impacted.
mhm. So here's what I've been noticing. That's in not this is not only N of one, but with all the like masters athletes that I work with too. And basically, like we've talked about this, masters athletes could be 35 and older, right? It's usually 40 and older, depending on the sport. But this is what I've been noticing lately, and it's crazy that as we do age, this wonderful biology of aging, we cannot effectively eat a large meal without it compromising our sleep patterns. So
Mhm.
that could be I don't fall asleep as easily or as well, or it takes me longer to sleep, or I'm waking up, or I'm tossing and turning, whatever it is to qualify that. But on the flip side of this, I've also noticed my younger athletes can put it down. Like, they can consume so much before bed and it actually helps them sleep.
Helps.
So
Yeah.
isn't that an interesting thing? And I need to probably research that a little bit more, but it's fascinating to me because I have to watch who I'm working with because from an age perspective, because it does differ. This is one clear thing that differs with the aging continuum with nutrition, and that is
Mhm.
the volume of food, before bedtime, essentially.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is interesting. I wonder, yeah, too, if that has to do with some of the neurotransmitters, like the
Hmm.
dopamine, serotonin
Yeah.
things, or if that's more a combination of things,
Yeah.
the digestion rates, and I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah. Yeah.
see.
I know.
But
Well, and sometimes, I mean, in my younger athletes too, a lot of times they have not eaten enough earlier in the day just because
oh,
their
that's good.
schedule. So
Good
perhaps
point.
that
Yeah,
that helps too, right?
that's a good point.
But it kind of goes to the whole like we've I think you and I grew up in the, oh, if you have a cup of warm milk before bed, it helps you sleep. So there are like these
Yeah.
old, call them wives' tales or not, but some of them actually work, right? I've
Hmm.
actually had a lot of athletes do the whole, oh yeah, I have a cup of warm milk. It's usually my international athletes that do that because they do that a little bit more often than US athletes. And I'm like, oh, that really works. And there's
Hmm.
there's conflicting data on that specifically. But listen, here's the thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it helps you, go for it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, right? If it's not, I
Yeah.
mean, my big thing is as long as it doesn't wake you up so you have to pee in the middle of the night because that
Right.
disrupts your sleep, right? But I
Yeah.
feel like there are some of those nutrients. I mean, whether it's carb, protein, or fat, whether it's milk, whether it's chamomile tea, which I mean, there are all these things that may or may not work. I feel like you just have to figure out what works for you. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder too, just thinking of the genes. I know
Mm,
bringing that up lately, like the clock
you're on the
gene.
genes lately.
I
Yeah.
know. Well, I'm
Yeah.
in love with the clock gene
Okay.
lately, and like how some of us have variants on that gene and we've been fighting it, but that may affect our circadian rhythm one way or another, which can then downstream from that is, ooh, yeah, after 7 p.m., eating is no bueno, or
Hmm.
whatever other things that might be stimulatory on the system. Anyway, that's just kind of tying to the experiment, find what's right for you, or this process of learning more, maybe from other methods to see what your sweet spot is. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Bob, too, just along those lines, if someone asks you, what's the best meal for me to get the best night's sleep?
Oh, I
How
know,
do
right?
you, aside from now, we talked about calories or that load
Yeah.
of composition wise, how do you guide, or is this kind of have to test some things other than our hand models and
Yeah.
some of that
My
foundation?
first step, honestly, I determine, well, we determine it based on age first, is what I do, right? So I'm like, okay, if you have sleep
Yeah.
problems and your master's age, so over 40 basically, and again, if you have sleep problems, you actually just mentioned it, but I actually say nothing after dinner. Nothing. Right. Because that's where I start. I want to start with that because this is an experiment, right? That's we need to see, and again, to your reference to the clock gene, there's some genetics involved here too, right?
Yeah.
And granted, as long as dinner's not at like 5 o'clock and you're going to bed at midnight, like that's a little unrealistic not to eat during that time.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like I want to start experimenting with the basic foundation. Like do dinner, let's leave everything else out, and then let's see how you sleep. And then we start to titrate different foods. So then maybe it is something like a small serving of a dairy, like maybe a plain Greek yogurt and some blueberries, just something very basic, very
Yeah.
small, right? But honestly, I am not to confuse the topic of sleep management and good sleep, but I also try to promote good net muscle protein synthesis at night. So I am actually a big fan of a dairy based something kind of snack if we're going to snack before bed
Yeah.
because the casein in dairy products can actually really help with that net protein synthesis overnight. But that's not sleep specific. But that's why I choose dairy products usually for that snack if the snack is going to be there.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a super helpful thing to keep in mind. Dinner is it, or yeah, that next eating decision is like, what does it look like?
Mhm.
And that kind of ties kind of what you're saying too. I'm thinking of types of carbohydrates and sometimes that response to, again, we can't separate volume of carb or calorie content, but also then like type of carbohydrate choice. So if I'm having a package of jelly beans versus equivalent calories from, a sweet potato or something
Mhm.
that's with my dinner or, right after, like what's the impact there on
Yeah.
our glucose levels and then
Yeah.
that whole response and then the lingering effects, maybe blood sugar wise or insulin and all of those downstream outcomes.
Well, it's a good point. Like I'm glad you brought up jelly beans because if you have jelly beans or call it whatever simple sugars you want to call it, right? It could be jelly beans, could be something else. But if you spike your blood sugar late at night and you drive that insulin response up, you're going to crash, right? And when you crash, you're actually going to be wanting something else. So what you're doing is actually you're going to be interrupting your sleep hygiene schedule because you're going to keep
Yeah.
feeding, right?
Yeah.
And being hypoglycemic on that bounce back is not good for trying to go to sleep either. So
Hmm.
I would say like I'm mad for like a piece of dark chocolate at night. Like I'm absolutely. So if you were like, okay, piece of dark chocolate or the equivalent of calories, since you brought that up in jelly beans, I would always do the dark chocolate. Now, granted, everyone knows I'm a chocoholic too, but that's what I'm saying is like if you're gonna have a snack, if you're going to have a snack, like let's make it make sense. Like let's just have empty calories. And I understand people have amazing sweet tooths these days, of which disclaimer on the side, a lot of your sweet cravings come from mismanagement of blood sugar. So if you listen to some of our episodes on metabolic efficiency training, you'll learn a little bit more about that. Okay,
Yes.
back to the topic at hand. But no, I feel like to your point, first thing is, okay, let's try not to eat after dinner. Then if you were going to eat, let's make it, let's have like smart food, like
Yeah.
literally. So it's not going to disrupt your blood sugar. Maybe it helps with protein synthesis. And then, I guess there are some foods where I try not to do like a lot of, or have athletes do like a lot of foods that take a long time to digest or really work hard in the body to try to digest kind of thing, or like beans at night. I mean, you're just kind of asking for problems if you're doing those type of things.
Yeah, that might be one of those like, let's go through an experiment with the
Yeah.
person, right?
Yeah.
And manipulating like the composition and type of foods, knowing that ultimately we're just trying to find the right mix of foods that support everything that we're looking for,
Exactly. Now,
which,
Dina,
yeah.
I know you're specializing a lot in females, specifically peri and postmenopausal. Are there any specific pre-bedtime food nutrition tips for these gals?
Well, that's a great question, Bob. And I think of especially the perimenopause transition, where with symptoms in line with how our estrogen and progesterone levels are changing, like these night sweats, the hot flushes, just irritability, insomnia, all these things. Like, how can we use food to help or hurt what's going to happen and those symptoms being worse? From a food perspective, a lot of it is stuff we've heard and you don't know it till you're in it. But spicy foods, believe it or not, for some women definitely make those symptoms worse. Not in the moment, but 3, 4 hours
Hmm.
later. Even when you're mentioning the dark chocolate or these things that have just a smidge of caffeine, maybe even depending on your caffeine metabolism and all that stuff, but it can just compound what's happening with our symptoms that wake us. So a lot of it is okay, level down the spices or those hot, like the jalapeno on fire kind of spices or herbs or any of those kinds of foods. And coming back to, yeah, let's focus on the protein carb and making sure we're eating sufficiently, but not things that might be common triggers for women.
It's a
Yeah.
good point. Okay, so we talked about so we talked about sleep hygiene schedule,
Yeah.
talked about hydration, talked about food. I feel like we should wrap this up with supplements.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so did you notice, listeners, how we went in that order? And that was on purpose because I don't feel like anyone should go to the supplement first.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like we went from kind of the bottom up, foundation up, right? So
Hmm.
it's kind of the tip of the iceberg where not if all else fails, but if you're really having a rough go around here and you've tried things, maybe we do introduce some of these supplements. So first one that it's actually pretty popular, D, is magnesium, right?
Yeah, I know we've talked about that one before. I think it's one that holds true for most everyone that can be helpful in terms of promoting muscle relaxation, calming brain, and just getting us to kind of cliche, but like calm down.
Yeah, calm down, calm down. Put your device down and calm down.
Exactly.
Well, and this is the interesting thing because I used to recommend fully 100%. And listeners, let me back up. There are different types of magnesium, and again, we have talked about this on previous episodes. But what I used to always recommend 100% of the time was magnesium bisglycinate, or also just known as glycinate, right? And Dina, I just actually read a study that threonate, which usually we use magnesium threonate more for cognitive health, cognitive functioning, actually had very similar benefits to relaxation in the body. So now I'm kind of back and forth. I'm like, okay,
Mm,
especially for my master's athletes, maybe we do a combination of like bisglycinates and threonate, and knowing that threonate may also affect the brain functioning too. So I think either or, you're doing pretty good with that.
yeah.
However, I don't want to just blanketly recommend a dose, but what I will say is a lot of athletes are deficient in magnesium. And you won't show it. Let me just back up. I'm gonna bring out lab testing really quick, just like you brought up genetic testing. But when you get magnesium test on your blood work, that tells you nothing. That's serum magnesium. You'll never be low in, well, most healthy people will never be low in that. You've got to have your what's called RBC magnesium tested, red blood cell
Yeah.
magnesium. And even then, it's not like it usually won't get flagged as low, but we as sport dietitians have recommended levels for athletic individuals. And that's what I'm talking about. Most of the people I see are very low in the athletic ranges. That said, I am finding a lot of people are using magnesium D for sleep, but they're not using the right amount. So they just look at the serving size and like, oh, it says take 2 capsules. But there's actually a dosage of magnesium that you need to induce these effects. And you know what I think we'll do, D? We're going to share that on our Patreon accounts. How
Oh,
about that?
that is awesome.
So we're gonna come up with some of our favorite magnesium supplements, both bisglycinate and threonate, and we're gonna tell you what dosages to take of each to positively affect sleep. So head on over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/ISN podcast. Remember, we are a sponsor-free podcast. That's why we're sending you over there to have some great conversations. And yeah, if you decide to pull up a membership with us, that'd be great. But that's what we're gonna share this information, D.
Love it.
The second one, I'm pretty heated about. I don't like it at all, but it's the most popular one. Listeners,
What
can you
is it?
guess what I'm going to say? It's melatonin. I don't like it
Ah,
at
you don't
all.
like it. Do you mean you personally or for the
I've
people?
never taken melatonin. I never will because I've seen
Ah,
such negative consequences from every athlete that I've had use it. Whether and there's again, there's a right dosage to take if you're going to start. And I just feel like the whole
yeah.
more is better concept here. And athletes are like, oh, I'm taking blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's way too much. And you get like it actually works the opposite because if you take too much or if you're sensitive to melatonin, you'll wake up with jitters and you'll be all like you won't feel rested at all, right? And it's actually working against you. That said, I do want to just loop in something. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm taking melatonin," how I try to get them off of that is actually through using tart cherry juice or tart cherry
Yeah.
juice concentrate. So I have like a little evening, I call it a cocktail, if you will, but tart cherry juice actually has natural melatonin, much safer.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not synthetic. And I'm not going to say it always helps, but if it doesn't help, the great benefit anyway is tart cherries are super high in anti-inflammatory compounds. So it's a win-win no matter what. So I'm sorry, I feel strongly about melatonin. Get off it. Just don't ever use it.
Well, I have a little bit different opinion, but
Yeah.
only because I have seen it be
It's good
helpful.
that you have a different opinion.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think some of our women in postmenopause or in high stress times, like we're trying everything else, Bob.
Yeah.
Sometimes short bouts of some melatonin I have seen be helpful. I personally have had mixed results where I've
Mhm.
had like insomnia when I've taken and I've tried to control everything else.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work for me. And I don't know, is this I haven't looked at all the genomics and genetics behind it, but dosing definitely can be a concern. Like long-term supplementation, I don't think is something we want to do, right? Just how it might
Yeah.
affect our natural production and things like this. So I think
Exactly.
I have seen, yeah, overall sometimes where it's helpful, maybe Band-Aid for a little bit
Hmm.
while we're working on many other things or getting through some tough times. So,
And I think also to keep in mind, I appreciate that outlook and that side of it because I also feel like I've seen athletes who kind of form a dependency on this, right? So
mhm,
it's not an
yeah,
addiction, but it's a dependency. So now you take it away or whatever, and or they forget to take it, and all of a sudden it has even worse consequences. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of, but I can see where it could be beneficial in some cases. Okay, I'll just leave it at
yeah.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Next one is one that I don't think is on the radar for a lot of people. So we've got two more left, listeners. So just to kind of
yeah.
let you know, this is, I mean, it hasn't been on my like top of my radar, but it's kind of floating around like under the radar, like 10,000 feet or below. But it's apigenin, right? Am I
Hmm.
pronouncing that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Apigenin, yeah, Apigenin. So this is an interesting one, D. Like it's I mean, it's funny because this is a compound actually in chamomile tea, which makes total sense. You're like, oh,
Uh-huh.
got it, right? Why
Yeah.
is chamomile so like, why do we always say chamomile tea? Well, this is why. It's this compound. And what do we know about apigenin?
Well, as you said, from the chamomile plant, but I think in extract, they're just seeing some help in terms of like that sleep promoting,
Hmm.
calming of the neurotransmitters. Maybe along with that is like the anti-inflammatory component.
Yeah.
Ultimately is helping out brain, which then touches all the other systems in the body. But like in if we can extract it from the chamomile plant and provide it in these maybe more potent doses, can that have a more powerful effect on sleep? But again, I think this is a little bit newer, right, Bob,
Very
on,
new, very new.
so we don't know, like, is this just going to be another melatonin thing
Yeah,
where everyone's
exactly.
taking it and it's ending
Yeah.
up not being helpful after all?
I find it interesting too because there is some, not a lot, and nothing I would actually talk about, but some pointing to research in Alzheimer's too with this. So we
Oh, yeah.
understand that there is some neuroprotective benefits to this and
Yeah.
neurocognitive. So I'm always interested, and I'm like, oh yeah, because listen, when you're talking about Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or dementia, I mean, we're talking about brain, right? And as we age, we should be very focused on our brain functioning, cognitive functioning. So again, not to just say listeners go out and get a bottle of Apigen and but just
Yeah.
maybe keep an eye on this because like you said too, it can help with relaxation and sedation, but it's an anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant. It's because it's from a plant compound, shockingly, right? Another plant
Right.
compound that
I
does
know.
good, right?
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had one more on our list, Bob, but I know we probably could have
Oh,
several more. We're just trying to
so
select the ones that are either newer that people might hear about or they have been around and a little
yeah.
bit more evidence based. But yeah, L-theanine. Do you want to take this one, Bob, and kind of speak
Yeah.
to it?
So L-theanine is actually it's let me go back. So a lot of people take L-theanine or they know of L-theanine in relation to caffeine, right? Because L-theanine will help kind of the counter effects of caffeine, like the jitters, right? That
Yeah.
we've all heard of. So if you're sensitive to caffeine, a lot of people have, or even some supplements will have L-theanine too. So you're not coming down off that caffeine rush, if you will. But that said, we know like L-theanine is actually it's not a sedative, but it can actually help lower, like promoting relaxation by lowering anxiety and kind of giving that more relaxation state.
Yeah.
I've actually had really good results with it with athletes. I've never taken it for sleep personally. Maybe I should start taking it. Maybe I'll try the next couple months. But
Oh,
no, I've
yeah.
had actually very good benefits and kind of results from athletes.
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen, I need to reflect because I think, oh, geez, it's been in combination with
Mm,
magnesium or some other kind of like
yeah.
stack that we've created. So I can't recall a situation where I've only used L-theanine, but that would be
hmm
something that one could self-experiment, I suppose.
Yeah, and usually
Yeah.
you want to take it about an hour or so before bed. It's it's just one of those. It's just like magnesium. Like don't pop it right before your bed. Your head hits the pillow, kind of a thing. That kind of goes back to the whole sleep hygiene schedule. Like that whole 1 to 2, 3 hours. Like what are you doing in the like
Hmm.
3 hours before bed, 2 hours before bed? Like if you're taking supplements, if you're drinking tea or not drinking tea, if you're doing a tart cherry juice cocktail, kind of a thing. Like what is it? But no, I'm very pro L-theanine for many different reasons. Again, that said, all of these supplements we're talking about, D, we don't know if they're going to actually work in an N of one situation. Like I've had many athletes, even though I said, yeah, L-theanine is work great, I've had many athletes where it doesn't even work, right? So, but then again, you have to, how do you titrate other lifestyle factors, other nutrition factors, other
Yeah.
stress factors? It's so hard to do that. Here's another thing that I see, and let me go on my tangent really quick. I don't see a lot of athletes giving these foods or supplements enough time to work. So they take it for like 2 or 3 nights and like, oh, it's not working.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes longer.
No, that's a really good point. Is when you know you need to address this issue, first of all, picking the low-hanging fruit, things that you know you haven't been doing that are more easily things that you can implement, and then kind of going from there to see how things are changing for you. But like you just said, Bob, you have to be semi-diligent and consistent with these interventions and really kind of track, right, for your own self. I think sometimes that's where the Aura Ring or some of the other gizmos, the wearables can be helpful. Like, oh, I've been doing this for 2 weeks and I can see the data,
Yeah.
the trend lines. And so I think this is positive or null or whatever and make that decision. But yeah, you have to have more than just one or two instances where you're making a change.
No, it's a good point. I think what another thing we should do is for our listeners is again send them over to our patreon.com ISN podcast site because I would actually be very curious how many of our listeners do have sleep challenges. I'm just totally curious,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe we can report that back on a future episode because if you all are having some sleep challenges, and listen, we just touched the surface here today, like
Yeah.
literally, right? And even like Dina said, we only chose what, four supplements. I mean, there's a lot of more supplements. There's a lot of other foods and situations, but we'd love to know if you're having sleep challenges, what are they? Is it because this is what I ask athletes, if you're having sleep challenges, is it actually falling asleep? Is it waking up at night, going to the bathroom? Is it waking up at
Yeah.
night, not going to the bathroom or going to the bathroom and then staying awake? Or is it the ability or not feeling refreshed when you wake up? So there are actually
Yes.
different types of sleep challenges, not just, oh, hey, I mean, has anyone ever asked you, oh, how'd you sleep? And you're like, oh, fine. But then you're like, well, wait a second. What part of the sleep was fine and not
Yeah.
fine? You know what I mean? So listeners, like you have to qualify what part of your sleep is not fine. Like let's talk about that on our forum on our Patreon account.
I love this, Bob. And I was only chuckling, and we can wrap this up, but for those of us who have a, shall we say, bed mate, those that might be snoring, or if my dog is snoring in the room, like these other things that I like, this is a decision. Am I going to go to another bedroom because the
Yes.
snorers are off the
Yes.
charts right now? Anyways, that's a side tangent, but things that we can control or not control, or
That's part of the sleep hygiene schedule. Like, do you
uh-huh.
need to be in another room for 2 hours, closed door, no dogs, no bed mates, no nothing,
Yes.
right? Lights, the whole blackout shades, all that stuff. Yeah.
Totally,
But like I
totally.
said, listeners, I mean, we just touched the surface. All right, D, lead us out here. Where should they go to interact with us more?
Yeah, we definitely want to meet up with you all over on our Patreon community, where again, you can join for free and interact with us or pitch in a couple bucks per month to help our podcast and get some extra behind the scenes content from Bob and myself. And that is over on patreon.com/ISN podcast. And I would just add, Bob, we love interacting on social. So if you follow us over on ISN Podcast on Instagram, that is a great place as well to connect. But with that, Bob, I look forward to hearing more from our listeners about their sleep and their sleep issues or wins. And we'll be sure to keep addressing these important aspects of our living, our life, our health, our performance as we continue to go forward. And I think I'll sign out for now, Bob. So, listeners, we will catch you on our next episode.